how do believers prioritize time, and how does work, how do we focus, how do we wrestle those things before God? So we've had a passage memorized for years out of Ephesians chapter 5, 15 and beyond, but it says, so then be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time. And then it says, we do not want you to be ignorant, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And so we've oftentimes talked about how do we steward our time before God? How do we make the most of our time? And just kind of over the last week or so, really, we thought, man, we really want to honor God with this project. Hey, Into Harvest friends, John here with Andrew. We wanted to take a few minutes today just to give you a summer update and to kind of let you know a few things that are going on with the ministry. So I think Andrew's kind of captured it best as we were praying and talking about before we jumped on, Andrew, that we're a small team with a lot of big ideas. So we are trying to wrestle through really being faithful with our time and really stewarding that before God. So as we kind of jump into this update, I wanted to throw it over to you just to give you a chance to kind of talk about some of the things that are going on. And then maybe also we have a chance just to kind of talk about some of the struggle of mankind in general when it comes to balancing time, wrestling well with God, and being good stewards. So it's been a crazy busy summer. We just had a time together where we went away to really plan through the next 6 months of Into the Harvest and the ministry here. So I wonder if you just kind of walk our folks through a little bit of an update, Andrew.
Yeah, this is a different type of episode conversation that we're having today, John. Typically, we're either doing interviews or we have a specific topic. Today, we really just wanted to go off the cuff and share a little behind the scenes from our own lives, but also the ministry of Into the Harvest, things that we're encouraged by from the past 6 months, and a little preview of what's coming here in the coming months. So, like you said, we just had some time away together with our wives for a prayer and planning retreat a few weeks back, and definitely encouraged by all the Lord has been doing with Into the Harvest over the past 6 months here 7 months in 2024. One of the things that we've been working on is a resource called the Pathway series, and this is a set of 3 books. These are resources for disciple making. And one thing I've seen in my own life, but also as I've sought to help and train others in living their faith and sharing their faith, is sometimes we just don't know where to start and where to go. And so that's really what the Pathway series is designed to do. It's designed to be a framework to help people have that path that they can begin to take other people on the journey of discovering Jesus, becoming a disciple, and then learning how to pass on their faith. And coincidentally, that's what the 3 books are called. So these are already available on Amazon. So book 1 is Discovering Jesus. Book 2 is Becoming a Disciple. And then book 3 is Passing on the Faith. So the booklets are finished. We published those a few months back. They're available at our website and also on Amazon. But we are also producing companion videos, especially for book 3, because book 3 is a set of 21 tools that people can use to help pass on their faith to someone else, and also to equip those people to share their faith. And so we wanted to have some videos that go with the book. There's a QR code in the book. And so we're wanting to finish those videos. We're probably about 80% done with those. Those will also live on our website for those that have purchased the book and want to access those. So all of that to say, we've been putting months of work into this particular resource that we're going to be providing folks. And we're on the home stretch. So what we're talking about doing over the next few weeks, John, is taking a break from our regular podcast schedule. We've been putting out weekly podcasts to encourage God's people. And we're really going to focus our energy on finishing the Pathway series, those videos, getting the website all dialed in and ready to go. And like you said, I think we just realized that we're a small team. We've got lots of ideas, but limited capacity, and we're just trying to be faithful with the hours, the minutes that God has given us. And I think that finishing the Pathway series here is going to be long term such a great resource for God's people and for the kingdom. So that's probably more than either of us planned for. But then again, we didn't plan. This is all off the cuff. So, any thoughts from your end on just what we've been working on and what you're encouraged by?
Yeah, I just think this idea of helping people have resources that give them, we've used these 3 C's a lot. In fact, Abigail was kind of a staple on our podcast for years, and she kind of joked on us with all of our acronyms. But when we really think about having conviction, clarity, and confidence to be a disciple, make disciples, it's been a great year for that. These resources we think will really help a lot of people do that, have conviction, confidence, and clarity. So that's really kind of our hope here. And even as we're wrestling through kind of finishing these projects, we've got a couple, 3, 4 right after that, that we're kind of gearing up for. But it's all within that same vein that we don't believe our resources are necessarily better than everybody else's, but we do think that it'll help give folks confidence, clarity, so they can kind of just, okay, I can lock in on this. I'm convicted to make disciples. Okay, how do I do it? And do I know God goes with me when I do it? So I think that's one of the big things this year. And so I'm encouraged. I think we've had a lot of great interviews over this year, but then also the projects behind the scenes, which folks just haven't been able to see. In fact, I got a text just recently saying, hey, I found these online. Why aren't you guys talking about them? Well, full disclosure, we're trying to finish the project before we say, hey, go to the website. And you're like, well, how come the videos aren't ready? So that's kind of where we're at.
Right.
But yeah, I'm really excited because I think God has kind of helped us know and kind of clarified our roles, yours and I's, as we partner together, Andrew, but then also to clarify the role of Into the Harvest and what distinct role we can play. And really, we believe that a lot of that is keeping people encouraged, but then also giving them resources that gives them those 3 C's, that they're convicted to make disciples, they have confidence, and there's clarity on what to actually do as a disciple maker. So it's been a good year for sure. We're only halfway through. I expect some even better things. Actually, I was working today with one of our editors to talk about our next project. So it's ongoing for sure. But yeah, really exciting because I think it's given us clarity on how God wants to use this ministry.
Well, that's the other part of it. We do have several other follow-on projects, and these will be resources, again, that people can use. I think most of them are the Pathway series, these are at cost. You have to buy the books on Amazon. It costs money to produce a physical resource like this. But any proceeds that go above and beyond the cost to actually produce and ship those resources, it just goes straight back to the ministry of Into the Harvest. John and I aren't getting any royalties on this. It'll hopefully just help us continue to grow and be a blessing to God's people. But we do have, the Pathway series is a big project. Folks who regularly follow this channel on YouTube or the podcast, or already use some of our Bible study and disciple making resources. There's things that you see through the podcast, but really what we're talking about here with the Pathway series represents a ton of work that we've been doing behind the scenes this year that we're excited to release and make available to folks so that they can have that clarity, confidence, conviction. I think when it comes to clarity, oftentimes there's 2 things that we struggle with. I know this is true for myself. One is that there are so many great resources out there. There are so many things you could do or that you could access, but sometimes more is not more helpful. It's just more information, more options. And so what we've tried to do is create a simple, a field-tested resource, because this isn't something we just sat down at a table and got out our pens and began to outline. These are resources that we've been using. I think the most recent one, we've been using this material for close to 10 years. And then with book 2, it's something we've been using for close to 20 years. So these are tools and resources that have been used for years now to make disciples. So there is a high level of confidence that these will be helpful for God's people. But one challenge to clarity is just there's so much. So we want to give people a simple resource, a simple framework that they can use. And then I think another challenge is to have a pathway, which is why we want to design this to help someone from starting with Jesus to maturing in Jesus. And so the first book, and it's all focused on Jesus. So discovering Jesus is the call to helping someone recognize Christ for who the scriptures have revealed him to be. The second resource is becoming a disciple. Well, once you recognize him, there's a call to respond to him by becoming one of his disciples. And then book 3 is passing on the faith, the call to represent Jesus, because all of us were called to, the Lord wants us to experience all 3 of those things. And it's a simple framework for how you help someone else progress from becoming a follower of Jesus to maturing and passing on their faith. So we're working on the videos. Like I said, even those are 80% done. So we're on the home stretch with those. And I'm hoping, within the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have everything online and ready to go. And even though we haven't been talking a lot about this over the past 7 months, folks are going to hear us talking a lot about it over the coming 5 months. So your friend might feel the other way in a few months, like, will you guys stop talking about the Pathway series? But I do think it's going to be a big blessing. So I'm excited for folks to get their hands on it.
Yeah, me too. I think we also felt like it was a great opportunity to talk about the Pathway series and talk about what's coming next, but also is a great opportunity as we kind of close down our time on the summer update, just to talk about how do believers prioritize time, and how do we focus, how do we wrestle those things before God. So we've had a passage memorized for years out of Ephesians chapter 5, 15 and beyond, but it says, so then be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time. And then it says, we do not want you to be ignorant, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And so we've oftentimes talked about how do we steward our time before God? How do we make the most of our time? And just kind of over the last week or so, really, we thought, man, we really want to honor God with this project. That's going to take us actually taking some strategic time to really focus on it. So I don't know if you've got some thoughts about that passage, but I think lots of times we aren't very purposeful about how we walk. So lots of times we don't make the best use of our time. So every once in a while, I think it's good to be able to step back and think, okay, how do I steward my time before God and make the best of it? So I don't know would you got some thoughts on that, Ephesians 5? I know we've had it memorized for years, but just that passage.
Well, I'm grateful to be on a team because all of us approach work differently. Some of us probably struggle to get started and keep going. Like, we need that accountability. We need the encouragement. Sometimes we need a kick in the pants. My personality is probably on the other side, which can be just as unhelpful, which is you're very type A, you're very schedule driven. Like you want to hit your deadlines. And sometimes it's good to say, hey, there's a higher priority that maybe we need to hit pause on a few things. In this case, the weekly podcast, we're going to hit pause on that for a few weeks here and take a summer break so that we can redirect, I think, our most valuable resource, which is our time and our attention, to finishing some work that the Lord has entrusted us with. We've talked about this. Sometimes there's a teaching that goes that, God is first, your wife is second, your family is third, your job is fourth. There's sort of a priority order that never changes. And I think we've talked about this, John. Both of us would say that's not really how life works. If I'm going in for major surgery, then I want his top priority to be me and working on me. Of course, so you're always wanting to be faithful in the daily ins and outs of life with what God is setting before you. And I think this is just a small opportunity for us to practice that, to really think through what has the Lord called us to, what is he what are the projects that He's set before us, because there are several projects that we're excited about. But which one do we need to really focus on here over the next month? And so it's been fun and encouraging to have a team that's able to pray through that, think through that, and then be able to make adjustments as needed. So yeah, I think this whole thing of, you were talking a little before we started recording about Genesis, and one of the challenges for being human is just we have limits, and that's why stewardship is important. If we didn't have any limits, we could just do it all. But that's not the reality of being human. All of us have X amount of time, X amount of energy, a certain capacity to focus, and so we're trying to connect that capacity with what God has given us to do in this moment. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think too, I often wonder, we think about those limits as, this very evil, this very bad, this kind of, what a pain if we just had more time in the day. But I think the older we get, the more we're realizing how much a gift that is, to enjoy what God has given us. In fact, you mentioned it, the Genesis passage, but, God himself did the day and night and rest, like he created those things, and before the invention of, false light and all these things. Once the lights are out, the lights are out. Once the sun goes down, there's the moon there, you got some reflection, but you can't work. There was no flipping on lights, and even the garden itself was laid up in such a way, enjoy every single tree except this one. Oftentimes we hear, oh, why can't I have the one? Or we think, why can't I have just this one tree? And God's like, man, I've given you every single thing you could ever want except this one tiny little thing. I have one small limit. So I think some ways the core of us really wants to push the limits. And so as men, as women, as folks who are created with ambition and desire, we'll have to wrestle through, what's the limit here that I need to embrace before God, to steward before him? So really, if you've lasted this long on our summer update, we just want to ask you for your prayers as we finish up a couple projects, but also we just wanted to kind of give you a glimpse behind the scenes of what we've been working on, but then also what we're praying through and wrestling through as we seek to be good stewards of God's resources, of the time that he's given us, of ITH as a ministry. So we want to say thank you, but also want to just plead for you for your prayers for us as we kind of close this project down for this season, really kind of begin the process of just letting people know this resource is out there. So yeah, thanks for being with us on the journey. Andrew, you got some final thoughts?
Yeah, a few things that I'd love to share with folks just as we wrap up this shorter conversation. One is that if they want to be in the know, as soon as these videos are online and we have fully launched, they can go to our website, intotheharvest.org, and then it's /pathway-resources. So I realize some of you are driving. That link is going to be in the notes here. If you're listening on a podcast, or if you're on YouTube, it'll be in the video description below. And there's a way to sign up for email updates so that you'll be the first to know when it is fully launched and available. So make sure you sign up for that email. Another thing that I would say is just sort of housekeeping. We do think that this will be probably a 2 to 3 week break, but it's sort of just dependent on how things go. So we won't be having new episodes of the podcast over the next few weeks, but hopefully by the end of August, we're back up and running with the podcast, the weekly podcast. So just be aware of that. And the last thing I would say is if folks want to support this ministry, we are basically 100% supported by giving partners, people who believe in what we're doing, want to see it continue, want to see it grow. And if you have not yet supported or come on board the giving team, then we would love to invite you to do that. It's a big part of how all of this works and continues. And there's a link in the podcast notes or in the YouTube description for how you can give and support the work that we're doing here with Into the Harvest. And we're grateful for those who are already on that team, and would encourage folks to consider joining us if you haven't had the chance to do that yet.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And love all those details. Excited about this. Hopefully you are too. And if you're looking for a way We've named it the Pathway Series because we hope you enter in one way and you're changed by the end, and you feel those conviction, confidence, and clarity to be a disciple, make disciples. So we can't wait to get that in your hands, but also get that in the hands of those you're trying to disciple. And we look forward to seeing you in the next couple weeks.